Hello, everyone. It's Rabbi Akiva Males, and I hope that you're well. Today is Friday. It's June 26th. We're getting ready for Parshas Korach. I want to share with you some fascinating details about almonds that I found out this week. Yes, I was reading up about almonds, and I learned some incredible details from one of the almond growers associations in California. Let me share some of those details with you. Here's the first one. California is the world's largest supplier of almonds, making up 77% of all almond production in 2017. That's globally. If you've eaten an almond recently, chances are it came from a tree in California's Central Valley. Fascinating. Number two, California's almond production is an industry worth $11 billion to California's economy. That's huge. And here's the third detail. How do all those almonds grow? Well, we need bees to pollinate, the cross-pollination between all the flowers, and there's just not enough bees in California. So beekeepers across the U.S. have mobile beehives that they're able to ship to California for the almond season, and then they'll take them to other places around the country, depending on what fruits need to be grown at different times of the year. Well, listen to what goes on about the bees coming to California. Perhaps no crop needs them, meaning the bees, more than California's almonds. And likewise, no single crop matters more to beekeepers' bottom lines than California's almond pollination, which currently makes up over a third of U.S. beekeeping revenues. So this is incredible. I always thought about professional beekeepers just working to produce honey, but no, they're professional beekeepers. Honey is almost, a side product of what they're producing. These guys who are going mobile with their beehives are taking them around the country to pollinate all these different orchards, and they're responsible for so much of the fruit and nuts and different produce that we have. I never knew this. I just assumed everything was local, but no, they're taking it on the road, and were it not for California's almond crop, it just would not be profitable for people to be in the business of having these beehives that could hit the road. So it's just amazing how various industries are linked to one another. But here's the next detail I learned. If you remember a few weeks ago, it may have already been a month or two ago, we were reading about this giant Asian hornet that had somehow found its way to America. It was being called the murder hornet. This hornet grows to be about 2 inches long, very large hornet. The pictures of them are wild. You see videos of them online, and they brutalize honeybees. Honeybees can't do a thing against them. They attack when they find honeybees. They rip them to shreds. They decapitate them. They steal the honey, bring them back to their hives. These murder hornets they've got the beekeepers in America really nervous. Let me read to you an article that I saw from the Miami Herald back in May. Here we go. It was called "Murder Hornets Kill Honeybees in Gruesome Ways. That's bad for all of us, experts say." So the first line of the article was, it didn't take long for news to go viral about the arrival of the Asian giant hornet, better known as the murder hornet in the United States. Now, just from the end of the article, the part that concerns us. But what will a world without honeybees look like if eradication efforts prove ineffective, meaning trying to eradicate this giant Asian hornet, the murder hornet? So the article continues. It says, our plates and the foods on them will look much different. 1 out of every 4 bites of food we eat is courtesy of bee pollination, the U.S. Department of Agriculture said. So no bees means significantly less food and significantly more food diversity. This is because honeybees spend the majority of their time pollinating about 75% of the fruits and nuts and vegetables grown in the U.S., according to the department. The California Almond Board said that without bees, almonds simply wouldn't exist. The Natural Resources Defense Council reported, without the critters to help spread coffee flower seeds, the caffeine we love will become more expensive and rare, the outlet said, because the plant is only open for pollination for 3 to 4 days a year. That's amazing. So look at the role that bees play, not just in almonds, but in so much food production and the risk that these murder hornets are posing to them. Absolutely wild. I did not know this. I did not know the role that bees were playing, and I didn't realize just that the role that California was playing in world almond production. Close to 80% of almonds around the world come from California. Did not know this. Now, what does this have to do with Parshas Korach? There's an incredible link to Parshas Korach because shkedim, almonds, play an important role in Parshas Korach. How so? After the failed rebellion, that insurrection, that Korach, who was the first cousin of Moshe and Aaron, after his failed rebellion, we find that Klal Yisrael is still not 100% certain who was chosen to be the Kohen Gadol. Is it really Aaron or not? So Hashem says we're going to end this. So in Perek Yud Zayin, chapter 17 in Bamidbar, what we read is as follows. Hashem says we're going to have one final test. Moshe, collect a mate, a walking stick, a staff, from each of the Nisiim, from each of the princes of each, the leaders, the chief of each Shevet, of each tribe. Write their name on that staff, and for representing Shevet Levi will be Aaron. Write their names on those staffs and put them in the Ohel Moed, in the innermost part of the Mishkan, close to my Shechina. And I'm going to make it very clear who is the one who's been chosen. The pasuk says in Chaf 20, the one that I've chosen to be the Kohen Gadol and serve me as the ultimate Shaliach Tzibor, the communal representative, Mateu Yifrach. His staff will flower, it'll blossom. Okay, so Moshe collects all the staffs, and the pasuk tells us in Chaf Gimel, Vayimi Macharas, it was the next day after spending time in the Ohel Moed, Vayavo Moshe el Ohel Ha'edus, Moshe goes back in, B'nei Parach Matei Aaron Lebeis Levi. And which staff was it that flowered and blossomed? It was the one from Shevet Levi. It was Aharon's staff. Vayetze Perach, it not only did it have flowers coming out of it, blossoms coming out, Vayotze Tzitz, it also had buds, Vayigmol Shkedim, and it even produced almonds. Amazing. Vayotze Moshe Eskolamatos Nefesh, he brings them out and he shows them to Bnei Yisrael. Everybody should see whose mata, their names are on it. Look which one blossomed. It was Aaron's. This ends it. Everybody should realize and feel secure in the understanding that Aaron has been chosen to be the Kohen Gadol. And then Hashem tells Moshe, keep Aaron's staff in the Mishkan so nobody should ever have these doubts ever again as to who was the chosen Kohen Gadol. Now, we're told, the Gemara tells us that this staff didn't just stay in the Mishkan, but hundreds of years later, when the Beis HaMikdash was built by Shlomo HaMelech in Yerushalayim, his staff was also in there. Aaron's staff was in the Beis HaMikdash as well, as a way to send a message that it's the descendants of Aaron are the ones who are going to be the Kohanim Gedolim, the high priests, and then the regular Kohanim as well. Everything is coming from Mishpachas Aaron, from the family of Aaron. Nobody's going to ever complain or argue about this again. That is how Shkedim, that's how almonds relate to our Parsha. I want to share with you a beautiful idea from Rav Moshe Feinstein. Rav Moshe Feinstein points something out here. He says, if you look at the psukim, an incredible nace, a real miracle happened here. If you notice how almonds grow, or any fruit grows in this fashion, first there's a flower, then there's a bud, and then there's the fruit. But you don't find that flower still existing by the time, several steps later, when that fruit is ripe and ready to be picked. It doesn't happen. There's no flowers there. Yet what are we told about the Mate Aaron? What are we told about the stick of Aaron that all of Klal Yisrael were to see? It says, Parach Mate Aaron Lebeis Levi, it flowered, it blossomed, but more than that, Vayotze Parach, it produced flowers, Vayotze Tzitz, it produced buds, Vayigmol Shkedim, and it produced almonds. That doesn't happen. What's going on? And Rav Moshe points out that the Gemara in Yoma tells us that King Yoshio HaMelech, towards the end of the first Beis HaMikdash, so this is close to 1,000 years after the episode of Aaron in the Midbar, and after the failed rebellion of Korach and that staff, close to 1,000 years later, when Yoshio HaMelech realized that the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash would be happening in the near future, he hid several very important items that were in the Beis HaMikdash. Primary amongst them was the Aron, was the ark that contained the luchos, that contained the tablets of testimony. That was primarily what was hidden, and the Gemara tells us there were secret passageways that were built into Har HaBayis beneath the Temple Mount by Shlomo HaMelech at the time of the construction of the Beis HaMikdash. Shlomo had a nevuah, he had foresight, he realized that the Beis HaMikdash will one day be destroyed, and he didn't want these treasures to fall into enemy hands, so he constructed these hidden maze-like catacombs beneath the Beis HaMikdash where items could safely be hidden. And the Aron, the ark, was chief amongst them that was put there. But the Gemara tells us, you know what else was put there? The Gemara tells us as well, She'etmino, that Yoshio HaMelech also hid Maklo Shel Aaron, the staff of Aaron, Shkedeha Uprocheha, together with its almonds and its flowers. That means that this miracle of the flowers being there at the same time that the almonds existed wasn't just in this incident in Parshas Korach this week, but close to 1,000 years later, the flowers still existed, even though the almonds were there as well. And Tosos picks up on this in Yoma and says, what's going on? That shouldn't be. If there's almonds, there shouldn't be flowers. How do they coexist? So the Tosfos answers, it was a nace, it was a miracle. There's no way to explain this other than say it was a miracle. So Rav Moshe Feinstein asks the following question. I understand that the Shkedim, Hashem had to make a miracle for the almonds to be there because he wanted to show Bnei Yisrael once and for all, after the episode of Korach, who is the chosen Kohen Gadol, and from who will the Kohanim Gedolim descend, and also the Kohanim, who is it going to come? I understand that. But this is even a miracle on top of a miracle. The fact that a flower is still there at the time that the ripe fruit, that the shkedim, that the almonds are there, that's a miracle on top of a miracle. Why was that necessary? We know that Hashem doesn't change the chukei hateva, the laws of nature, unless it's absolutely necessary. Why was that necessary? Why did Hashem make this miracle? That's Rav Moshe Feinstein's question. And listen to the theory he suggests. Rav Moshe suggests as follows. Hashem made this miracle of allowing the flowers to coexist, even though the almonds had already been produced, because Hashem wanted to teach us a very important lesson. Very often, we look at our spiritual lives and we compare them to the same set of standards that we would put in our materialistic pursuits. So for example, let's say I'm working, I've been tasked with a certain job. If I'm not able to complete that job, I'll feel like a failure. I won't get a paycheck. If I was a tailor and I was asked to make a suit, if I was a shoemaker and I was asked to make a pair of shoes, if I don't make those shoes, if I don't make that suit, it doesn't make a difference how much effort I put in. I'm not going to be paid. I didn't produce. I couldn't bring forth the finished product. I might make that same mistake and apply that to my life of ruchnis, to my spiritual pursuits. And I might say whether that comes to my Torah study, my goal of accomplishing mitzvahs, of keeping the Torah, being involved in whatever chesed, other spiritual pursuits I'm involved in, I might make that mistake and say it's all about the bottom line. Did I produce the finished result or not? If I did, I'll be rewarded and I'll have something to feel about it and I'll have achieved spiritual growth. But if I didn't, nothing done. I didn't accomplish anything. I might make that same mistake. Rav Moshe says that would be a colossal failure, though. We should never make that mistake. Hashem loves our efforts. Every effort that we're engaged in spiritual pursuits, we're accomplishing something. We're growing on a spiritual level, and we will be rewarded for that. Hashem wanted to send us that message. So Hashem says, what am I going to do? I'm going to leave the prachim. I'm going to leave the flowers on that staff. I'm going to make it clear. It's not just about the almonds. It's not just about the finished product, not just the fruits of our labors, but it's about the steps that went on before then. It's also about the prachim. He calls them pirchei kedusha, the blossoms of holiness. Every stage in the process that brings us to the fruits of our labors, to the final product, they're just as precious in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All of the yigia, all of the effort, all of the toil that I engaged in is just as important, and they will never disappear. So that's what Rav Moshe was trying to say. That's how HaKadosh Baruch Hu was teaching us that lesson. By allowing those flowers to exist, he was telling us never to feel discouraged. And for one reason or another, we're not able to produce a finished product. All the steps that we took to get there, those were incredibly valuable. We grow from them spiritually. Our neshama is nourished by them, and we'll be rewarded. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will reward us for each and every one of our efforts. We should not make the mistake of comparing our spiritual pursuits into the way how we understand our material pursuits. That's what Rav Moshe says there. And it's a beautiful, beautiful idea that pirchei kedusha never disappear. It might be with a tree. The flowers are gone once the fruit is developing, but not when it comes to ruchni, not when it comes to spiritual pursuits. The pirchei kedusha never disappear. They'll always be there. We will have accomplished. We'll grow from that. We will be rewarded from that. And that's something to always remember. A very similar vart you find from the Chafetz Chaim. I've seen this in a couple of places, and apparently this was something he would love to say over. Anyone who's ever been to a siyum, to a completion of a significant amount of Torah study, you'll find that in the prayer that's said, the tefillah that's said after the siyum, there's a line that's taken from the Gemara. And we thank Hashem for having had the opportunity to be engaged in Torah study. And we say, Sha'anu amelam v'hem amelam. We are engaged in toil, and the world at large, outside of Torah study, they're also engaged in toil and hard work. Anu amelam v'mekabim schar. We work hard and we are rewarded for our work. V'hem amelam v'einem mekabim schar. They work hard and they're not rewarded. So the Chafetz Chaim asks an obvious question. What does that mean? Have you ever seen a shoemaker work to make shoes and not be rewarded? Have you ever seen a tailor make someone a suit, make someone a clothing, whatever item of clothing it is, and not be rewarded? That's what they're paid to do. They work, they produce something, and they get paid for the finished product. What are we saying to Hashem? Anu amelam u'mekabim schar. We work and we get reward, but others work and they don't get reward. What does that mean? So the Chafetz Chaim says it's coming to address this point. The Chafetz Chaim says it's addressing this point that we may make the mistake of comparing our ruchni concerns, our spiritual pursuits, with material pursuits. And yes, when it comes to material pursuits, I'm only paid for the finished product. There are people who are amel, they may work for a long time, but if they couldn't produce, they won't be paid. That shoemaker could have slaved away trying to make that pair of shoes, but for one reason or another, he couldn't do it. The person's not going to pay him for the work he put in. I want a finished product. That tailor could have worked very hard on that suit, but if he can't produce the suit, the customer's not paying for it. He wants the finished product. Anu amelim and makabel schar, we're saying to Hashem, when it comes to Torah study, when it comes to our spiritual pursuits, whether that's mitzvahs, chesed, whatever it may be, Hashem values all the toil, all of the effort, all of the hard work that we put in. And every step of the way we're going to be rewarded for. And even if, God forbid, for one reason or another, he doesn't let us accomplish our ultimate goal, and we're not able to achieve that which we set out, the goal that we set out to accomplish, we're not able to achieve that goal, for whatever reason it may be, we will still have grown in the process. By the fact that we toiled, we were involved in mitzvahs, we were involved in Torah, we were involved in chesed, we will have grown spiritually, our neshama will have been nourished, and we will be rewarded. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will pay us for our efforts. And that's what the lesson of Moshe Feinstein is saying here as well about the Pirchei Kedusha. That's why the flowers are there. Hashem says, I'm going to make this miracle, not just that almonds are going to grow, but that the flowers will remain. The flowers will be there too to tell us it's not just about the fruits of our labor, it's about the efforts that we put in. And we're going to be rewarded for all of those efforts. And that's unique to spiritual pursuits. In other areas, our material concerns, we're only rewarded for the finished product. Here we're going to be rewarded for all the efforts we engaged in. And that should lift our spirits if we ever find ourselves that for one reason or another we weren't able to achieve our goals. For one reason or another we couldn't produce and we weren't able to enjoy the fruits of our labor. If it was spiritual pursuits, we should never feel dejected, we should never feel depressed, and that should never hold us back from continuing to engage in spiritual pursuits moving forward. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God recognizes everything, every step of the process, all of our efforts. Those Pirchei Kedusha, those flowers, those blossoms of holiness, of sanctity, will never disappear, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will see to it that we will always be rewarded for it. I think that's an incredible message and something to think about this Shabbos. Let's not just think about the almonds. Let's not just think about bees and those murder hornets. Let's also think about those flowers and what those represent and the deeper message behind them that should encourage all of us to always engage. Don't ever feel dejected. Continue to engage and toil and work hard on our spiritual pursuits. Have a good Shabbos, everyone.